And a very good Sunday morning to you, Grenada, and the rest of the world. Yes, sir, today happens to be the 20th day of October under beautiful sunny skies. We say, thank you, Lord, for this day which you have made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. My friends, I'm George Grant saying welcome to the Sundays with George Grant shebang. And I'm glad to see that you guys are with us. Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us. Boy, let me tell you, we got one hell of a morning. Not a hell of a morning. It's just going to be a wonderful morning here. Because we've got a couple of guys coming in here at about 10:30 this morning. Here we go. He's getting closer. He's getting closer. I see here that the actual winner this morning is Rachel John. Good morning, Rachel, and thank you very much for joining us. And I think it's the first time you have won this little race. Thank you so much for joining us. Ryan Jabon, that's the person who's getting closer. But he's in such a hurry to get on there. He just says, good day. Good day to you too, Ryan. Kathleen Thomas is saying good morning to you guys. And Anthea Rello is saying good morning, George, from a cold New York. How come you're not in Decatur, Georgia this morning, Anthea? You're migrating north? Maybe that's why it's cold. I want to hear what Margaret says when she gets on here, whether she's going to mention how cold it is as well. So, yeah. Anthea says it's cold in New York. Peter Bishop's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Peter is fifth this morning. And Fitzroy Adams says it's a cloudy day in Brooklyn. Bernard Gilbert's also saying good morning to you guys. So I guess we have established that it's cloudy and it's cold in Brooklyn. Does that mean that you have had a premature end to autumn? Time will tell. Also chiming in from New York this morning and sending God's blessings is Kipling Francis and Anthony DeRiggs. I guess he's out there remotely with his little gadget. Don't know whether he's using a cell phone or an iPad, but he's out there in Prospect Park. Says, thank God for life, family, and friends. Amen. Amen. I began in that direction as well, Anthony. Hazel Ferguson. Hazel Ferguson. Boy, you know, she's been winning this thing for a little while now, but she's got the stuffing beat out of her this morning, and she just snuck in very quietly and said, good morning, everyone. Where is she? Good morning. Happy Sunday, everyone. Yeah, she's quiet because she got whipped this morning. Anyhow, good to see you, Hazel. Claude Putna is saying good morning and wishing a happy Sunday to everybody. Oswin Lewis is also watching in Brooklyn there this morning. Good to see you, Oswin. And our good buddy out there in Cajecton, Jean says good morning to the classroom. Alana, haven't seen you in a little while, Alana, but good to see you this morning. She says, good morning, travelers and George. She's not going to call you guys pilgrims. She's going to call you guys travelers. Well, one way or another, it's such a pleasure to have them all, Alana, and you too. Thank you very much for joining us. She says, George, I love to dial in, even just to see your skin. My skin? She says, I can see evidence of the sun all over your all over your face. Well, take another look. That's more age than sun. Oh, Helena, good to see you. And hey, here she comes. Margaret says, good morning, all. Crisp, but not cold. But to Anthea, it might feel colder than Georgia. Temps are going to the low 60s. Low 60s. Those are wonderful temperatures, Margaret. Kind of temperatures I like, and maybe that's the reason why I so enjoy autumn. Eh? Yeah. Michael Alexander is also chiming in, saying happy Sunday to everyone. So Ryan Jabon says, did you hear of the man from Marquee receiving 6 lashes of the cat o' nine tails in Grenville Police Station for animal cruelty? No, I did not hear about that, Ryan, but if that was the case, maybe justified. And I can't believe it, but somebody has actually taken action against animal cruelty. Hey, maybe something's happening. We're waking up. Yeah. I see the ways that some people treat their animals here, and it just makes me so sick. John, I think you know what I mean. John loves dogs, as do I, and so yeah, it's nice to see some action being taken. Okay. And by the way, Ryan, when did this happen? Something happened recently? Whatever. Okay, folks, let's get down to business here. Let's get down to business. We are going to begin with, hold on a sec. Wrong graphic there, so hold on a sec. Hold on a seckie. Da, 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 da. There we go. The Grenada Advocate is going to be the first of our 2 editorials this morning, as they always are. And their piece this week, which was published on Wednesday, is captioned, Deal with Global Issues. Okay? So we're going to deal with the Advocate this morning. And our second editorial, comes to you from our friends down at the New Today. And I don't remember the last time I saw a one-word byline from the New Today. That word today is unfortunate. Make you scratch your head and wonder what they're up to this morning, eh? Well, you are going to find out in just a wee bit. Yes. Okay. And then, where do we go from there? After that, we're going to talk, or we're going to go right into our features. And we have a feature this morning where you're going to be hearing, no, that's absolutely wrong. You get out of there. Yeah, I'll feature this morning. Let's see here. Yeah. We're going to talk about passports. Who is we? Mr. Brian Pitt. As always, Brian was with us on Friday morning, and in that little 25-minute tete-a-tete, talked about a series of things, as we always do. And one of them was the increase in the price of passports. Yeah? We talked about that. Talked about civil disobedience. Yeah? Interesting comments came out of that one. And he also talked about fiscal responsibility. Yeah. That's why I decided, hey, we got to share that with the pilgrims here on this Sunday morning, because a lot of you I know aren't able to join us on weekdays. So that's going to be the first of our features, and we'll get into that right after the editorials this morning. Then we move to our second feature, where we actually have 2 people coming to sit here this morning. Two persons coming to sit here this morning. And they are Mr. Brian Pitt. Yes, Brian is coming in here this morning. He's been dying for this opportunity to have a little one-on-one with another friend of ours, Cajecton Hood. Brian, I describe here as a social commentator. And he's going to be joined by our former Attorney General, Cajecton Hood. And folks, they're going to focus this morning on the Constitution. A lot of questions need to be asked about the Constitution. and I had to pick one. Last night I sat here scratching my head and saying, boy, what caption do I give to this segment this morning? And I couldn't come up with one. So I finally settled for this. Has our Constitution gone to hell in a handbasket? Yeah. Well, I guess these guys are going to be trying to answer that this morning because they are very concerned about where our Constitution has gone or is going. Okay? And to tell you how serious an issue this is, I decided to get them in here this morning at 10:30. In other words, we're giving them a full hour and a half. Now, I mean, these two guys, I mean, you know Cajecton, never at a loss for words. You know Brian, never at a loss for words. And so I figured, look, I don't want them to leave out anything. So we're going to get together at about 10:30 this morning. That's about an hour and 20 minutes or so from now. Okay? There, my dear friends, is your rundown for this Sunday morning. Okay, so let me get back here to social media. Ryan has responded to my question about the 6 lashes of the cat o' nine tails at the Grenville Police Station for animal cruelty. He says it was ordered by the magistrate. Okay, I didn't know about that. Okay. Then Lawrence Kruthoff is checking in, and he is saying, good morning, George. He's watching and listening from Birch Grove. Hi, Chester, the Birch Grove man. Yeah, I haven't seen Chester yet this morning, I don't think. But I'll tell you something, Lawrence. I hope you're not going to pull out the Grenada again without checking in. I need to see this face. I've got to see if I remember this face. Okay? And Sonia McKee-John is saying good morning from NYC. Well, good morning, girl. Wayne Francis saying good morning. Spice Babes Duncan says, good morning, George. I'm locked in from sun-kissed Guave. Hello there, the city that never sleeps. Actually, when was it, boy? I think it was last Thursday or Friday. Huh? We passed through Guave on the way down. And you know, it was the quietest I'd ever seen Guave. This is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Quietest I'd ever seen Guave. It's always a very bustling city or town or village, whatever. But it was kind of quiet. Sonia McKee says, civil disobedience. Ambrose was looking for attention. Passport prices are madness, says Sonia. Yeah, we're going to be discussing all of those this morning, girl. Arthur Lankine is saying, happy Sunday to you, Brother George. Well, good morning, Brother Arthur. And Claire Antoine is saying good morning from Birmingham. Now, I am assuming, for all intents and purposes, that is in England. Hello, Birmingham, across the pond. Nice to see. How's Brexit? Don't answer. Don't answer. Hilda Wells saying good morning, Mr. Grant. Hilda, do I have to call you Miss Wells? Just say, hey, George. You know, we're very, very informal on this program. In fact, all of the programs on Grenada Broadcast. You know, if you come in here looking for a Mr. This and a Mr. That, came to the wrong place. You know, we're all one people. Okay? Now, thank you. Okay. Claire Antoine says it's afternoon in cold Birmingham. Well, get ready, girl. Guess winter is just knocking on your door. And Ryan Jabon wants to know if I like Fish Friday. Absolutely. I haven't been there Fish Friday in years. But I'll tell you, pretty much every time I've been to Fish Friday, I've enjoyed it immensely. It's a really, really fun outing. I don't even know how they're doing these days or if they're still around, but anyhow, thanks. Spice Babes Duncan saying, Arthur Langine, my messenger isn't accessible, so I can't receive or see my messages. Okay, Spice Babes. Hilda Wells responds by saying, no, it's Hilda Wells. Okay, well, I saw two Wells. I just didn't want to fall into one of them, so I, never mind. Okay, folks, where are we now? Let me take a first little break here this morning, and then we shall return with the buzz.
Hey, what? I just came from the land and this sign here caught my eye. What's that sign about?
Someone must have asked GRENADA to move a pole. But you know, there's no space reserved on the side of the road for planting poles. So GRENADA has to get permission from landowners, and that can take a lot of time.
Oh, GRENADA asked me to help them contact my neighbor Ben about planting a pole on his land. But Ben passed away. His children own the land, but they all live abroad.
That's why GRENADA needs customers to inform them in writing at least 3 months in advance.
3 months? All that?
It seems like a lot, but think about the time it will take for GRENADA to find and get permission from all of Ben's children. And sometimes moving one pole requires you to move the pole before, the one after, plus the wires that support them on the ground. That means even more landowners to find and get permission from. Then GRENADA needs to schedule their teams and notify customers about any power outages.
Well, I need the pole on the farm moved, so I'm going to write GRENADA a letter now.
GRENADA, energizing our Grenada.
You don't know how many hurricanes will be coming this season, so you need to be prepared. At Hubbard's Hardware and Building Supply Departments and the Food Fair supermarkets, everything from canned foods, flashlights and batteries, to plywood, tarpaulin, lanterns, roof repair kits, water tanks, etc. are available. For over 90 years, we've helped you prepare for and recover from storms. Hubbard's Hardware, Food Fair supermarkets, and the Grenadian General Insurance, an integral part of your hurricane preparedness plan.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Quad Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Okie dokie, here we go. Wayne Francis says, yes, Mr. Grant, I encourage everyone to visit Fish Friday. Myself and my wife went a few years ago, and it was great. Wayne, I know what you're talking about, man. And, you know, it's not just fish, man. Lobster and lamby and all kinds of stuff, okay? Anyhow, now, let's settle down here and get into today's edition of The Buzz. And as always, my dear friends, to me personally, the most important part of every program that I do is sharing the Word of God. Today, we begin with Hebrews chapter 10, verses 19 to 25. And I quote, "Therefore, brothers and sisters, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened for us through the curtain, that is, his body. And since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with the full assurance that faith brings, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience, and having our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope that we profess. For he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds. Not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. That reading from Hebrews chapter 10, verses 19 to 25. All right? 21 minutes after the hour. Yes. Here she comes. Little Angel checks in this week. Yeah, this lady is also so thoughtful, always so thoughtful. Her piece this morning is about Shepard Smith, the Fox reporter who just decided to say, chuck it. Those of you who watch Fox News know who we're talking about. Well, here's what Little Angel had to say about this week's resignation, last week's resignation of Shepard Smith, also known as Shep. Well-known journalist Shepard Smith took a stance which is unheard of in Grenada. Hardly any Grenadian reporter will do what Smith did. Walk away from wrongdoing when it was so evident in his workplace. Considered a role model, a consistent defender of the facts, a reputable and accomplished journalist. Shepard Smith had news for the world when he resigned from the Fox network on October 11th. In his words, and I quote, "Even in our currently polarized nation, it is my hope that the facts will win the day, that the truth will always matter, that journalism and journalists will thrive," unquote. He stated that sometimes facts are displeasing. Journalists report them without fear or favor, quote, unquote. Smith admitted to speaking truth to power, confronting leaders and those in government. Observations were that Smith left the Fox News network because he couldn't take it anymore. It was also said that he presented the facts which others left out about President Trump. He told the truth in an environment where no one else did and where there wasn't room to do so. Shepard Smith defended truth when he walked out of the Fox News office where he was employed for over 20 years. He stood up for what was right and offered hope to a world that is plagued by misrepresentations, misinformation, mistrust, propaganda, fake news, alternative facts, and blatant lies. A world that has grown to disrespect reality to its own detriment and degradation. Similar stories can be told about the media in Grenada, and it will be surprising if any one of the practicing professionals take a stance, as Shepard Smith did. The broadcast of false and misleading information is common, and recent claims that pertinent recordings have been destroyed is testimony to destroying the truth. Local Grenadians are still afraid of speaking up. Self-censorship continues, and indications are that the government controls the media. Practicing journalism in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique is obviously very challenging, and taking a bold step against wrongdoing may never materialize among the majority of local reporters. Smith has proven to be a role model for local journalists who face threats when practicing the profession and upholding the truth. For decades, the media in Grenada has also been known to spread propaganda. Politicians often use this cheap tool to assassinate characters and promote themselves in order to gain favor and remain in power. The practice hasn't diminished over the years. In the 1970s, Radio Grenada acquired the name Radio Lionel because of the number of lies it spread among its listening audience. The good names of well-known Grenadians have been tarnished. Honest and law-abiding citizens have been hurt. Yet, governments and those in leadership positions continue to engage in propaganda. Citizens continue to accept and do nothing about it. It is time for Grenadians and the rest of the world to begin to appreciate truth and accept it for what it is. Shepard Smith is one of many who ought to be admired for the stance he took in upholding the truth, not only by his words, but action, and walking away when it was right and fitting to do so at all costs. Signed, Little Angel. Ah, there you have it, folks. Told you, she hit the nail on the head this morning. Well, she usually does, but did again. Okay. Oh, let me, oh boy, you guys have been pumping in stuff. Vernon Louison says he's in a cold Florida, New York, and an avid listener. He says he's following and sends a pleasant good morning to everybody. Margaret Francis says, so Ryan, you're telling me it's 6 lashes for animal cruelty and $2,100 EC for pedophile. Shaking my damn head. Mags. The law in this place has gone bonkers, Mags. The law has gone bonkers, the legal system. Wow. Sonia McKee-John says, which supports to be a 5-year-old sentence. It's crazy. I'm not sure what you mean, Sonia, but anyhow. John says this whole thing is unbelievable, and that's absolutely true, boy. This social media has been abuzz with comments, and tomorrow morning on Good Day Grenada, we're going to take that on. Ryan Jabon says he was caught pre-act. Guys, I'm not going to ask again. I'll just ignore some of the comments. You know, I'm trying. It's not always easy when you're sitting here and people just post stuff because they know what they're talking about. They think, I know what they're talking about. It doesn't work so. It doesn't work so. Please, just take your time and explain exactly what you're trying to say. We all want to hear what you have to say. So please, help us to comprehend. Okay? Thanks. Glenn Andrew, and by the way, don't tell me that you're talking to the person on Facebook, because, I mean, the reason why you put stuff on Facebook is because you want me to see it. And if I see it, I want it to get on the air. I do not want to ignore anybody. Okay? So please, you're not just speaking to the person. You're speaking to all of us. Okay? Thanks. Glenn Andrew Mark is saying good morning. And John says, Ree Shepard Smith, if Grenada reporters did that, there would be none. But isn't that what the fools on the hill are after? Good one, John. Good one. Wayne Francis says, this is really a sad situation. And another black eye for Grenada. And word is that this man was allowed to leave, free to harm others. Yeah, he's talking about the pedophile. At least the commissioner of police has acted, okay? And he's going to take this matter back to court. Ryan says, Grenada's media and journalism and churches seem neutered. Yeah, well, there are some of us who are still fighting against all odds. Yeah? And paying the price. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a price worth paying. Erica Mitchell is chiming in. Tessa Barry is saying good morning and wishing you all a happy Sunday. Good to see you there, old Tess, and congratulations. Congratulations. Tess was on a panel in Trinidad recently. She was invited to sit on a panel to assess the upcoming budget of the Trinidad and Tobago government. Yeah. Congrats, girl. I'm going to ignore Ryan Jabon says, not fit for a Sunday program. What is not fit for a Sunday program? Grims, okay. Don't lose any sleep, George. Break time.
GRENADA Community Partnership Initiative, supporting health.
To the individuals who will be using these vehicles to serve the people, please ensure while we are using these tools that we use these tools in a manner that we will all be proud of. To GRENADA, a long-standing partner with us, a true testament of what can happen when private and public sector work together for the benefit of the people.
GRENADA, energizing our community.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Can I have a chicken lunch, please? Large.
Real nice today.
I don't want that.
But you just asked for a chicken lunch.
I don't have problem with the lunch. Afraid the container.
What is the problem with it?
These styrofoam containers, they don't good for the environment. They shorten with life.
What foolishness you telling me? So what you want me to use?
Put my food in this.
Where you get that?
At the food fair, where you could get all biodegradable food boxes and disposable food supplies like cups, plates, anything you could think about. Name it, it's there. And they don't harm the environment. Food fair, taking the lead in cleaning up and protecting the environment. Hey, like you take me advice, you get in your biodegradable food supplies.
Well, girl, I supporting who supporting the environment. That is why I shop in at food fair.
Food fair, where you can fill your baskets without emptying your pockets. Products distributed by Hubbard's agency, Kirani James Boulevard.
Hey, looky who is here this morning. I hope I pronounced the name right. Manusart or Manusart Alexander is checking in from the UK. Good to have you on board. You're another one out there in the UK this morning. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, Pilgrims. Oh, Lincoln Depredane's also there this morning. Terrence Williamson, Kalon Boyd, Robert Marichaux, Allison Tisha George, Ian Blakey. Hello there, Mr. Blakey. I'm still waiting to go on that jaunt around the island. We got to get some more pictures. Yvonne Joseph is with us. Yeah, just some of the folks who are with us there this morning. Now, my dear friends, here comes the editorial, which appeared in this past week's edition of the Grenada Advocate. It is captioned, Deal with Global Issues. This week, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank Group are having their annual meetings in Washington, D.C. These sessions are attended by IMF and World Bank officials, prime ministers, finance ministers, central bankers, investment bankers, and heads of other global and regional institutions. There have been a host of other personnel attending, those who are considered the decision makers in the countries which make up the membership of the two Washington, D.C. based institutions. Meetings such as these by two of the world's most powerful and influential institutions carry enormous significance. That's because they tend to identify and then discuss very passionately many, if not all, of the issues which hamper the smooth functioning of the global economy, and those that affect regions, whether they be the Caribbean and Latin America, Africa, Asia, Europe, among others. They also do a revision of global growth, which in every instance is either lowered or increased, depending on circumstances which have changed since the previous meetings. If one were to follow the course of global events over the past 6 or 8 months, it would not be difficult to come up with an agenda for the deliberations of those who will be attending the meetings. So far in 2019, and even continuing from last year, a number of developments have surfaced and have turned out to be headline grabbing. For starters, the ongoing trade war between the United States and China, the world's two largest economies, continues unabated, leaving other countries to speculate as to how impactful this will be on their economies. Climate change is also a big issue, and again, it seems as if the big industrial countries do not care about the ramifications of their policies that contribute to global warming and other negative developments. The political and economic crisis in Venezuela looks as though it will end another year with no settlement in sight. In the meantime, Venezuelans trying to escape the violence and looking to end the suffering continue to escape to neighboring countries in South America and as far north as the Caribbean. Tensions are mounting in the Middle East between the United States and Iran and Saudi Arabia, and the same Iran. There are challenges to the Brexit saga. These are just a handful of the political events that call for resolution. With such large attendance and the frankness that takes place at these meetings, we would like to urge delegates to come up with blueprints for economic growth, support for countries, measures to tackle global poverty, and an end to the political crises. The trade war between the U.S. and Canada must be settled. There is the possibility that the world economy could end up in recession as a result of that trade war. Coming so soon after the 2008-2009 recession, which is still having a negative impact on countries, and with a recovery not so stable, these trade disputes need to be resolved by those assembling in Washington. A trade war means higher consumer prices for third world countries doing business with the combatants, the erection of trade barriers, and all kinds of economic contortions. Let this year's World Bank and IMF meetings be results-oriented. That, Pilgrims, is the editorial which appeared in Wednesday's edition of the Grenada Advocate. Let's get back here to social media. Lydia James has also joined us, and so has the Right Honorable Pele Darbo. Good to see you. I think that's it. Ian Otway is also there, and Ruby Andrew. Good morning. Thank you all, even those of you who are remaining incognito. All right, folks, break time, then we'll come back with the new today. And by the way, I'm a little bit apprehensive about reading the next editorial, and I'll tell you why. There are some names in there. It takes some sort of linguistic contortionist to pronounce those names. So when I read that editorial, remember I'm doing this live, okay? When I read that editorial, if you find me hesitating when I get to those names, and there are a lot of them, bear with me. But I'm doing this in an effort to present what actually appeared in this past Friday's editorial from the New Today. Folks, I hope that you will be sympathetic towards me. Of course you will.
In our part of the world, we need to be prepared for natural disasters like storms and hurricanes, even outside of the season. I'm sure you'll agree that keeping our loved ones, homes, and businesses safe is important. So, I came up with a few quick tips to help you stay safe. First, make a family disaster plan and ensure that everyone in your household is familiar and comfortable with it. Remember to add batteries and flashlights to your emergency kit. Now, for electrical safety. Familiarize yourself with your electrical panel, as it may be necessary to switch off the power during a storm or flood. Make sure you install a transfer or isolation switch to prevent your generator feeding electricity to Grenlec's line. If trees are too close to power lines, call Grenlec at 237 for advice. By following these easy steps, you will be well on your way to being hurricane ready. Don't be caught off guard by natural disasters. Prepare now. For more information, visit grenlec.com.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Because your vehicle is a necessity, being roadworthy is critical. Hubbard's Motor Department introduces its new tire and battery sales and service outlet located at Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, close to the Sugar Mill Roundabout. Available are a wide range of competitively priced tires, maintenance-free batteries, oils and lubricants. Keeping in mind your busy schedule, this outlet is equipped to provide you with fast and reliable service. Simply drive in and you'll be delighted with your service experience. For more information, contact 440-2087. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Quad Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Alrighty, folks, okie dokie. It's now, let's see here, 9:47. Here comes the editorial which appeared in Friday's edition. Oh, by the way, before I get to that, a couple of comments here. First of all, Joan Wellington saying good morning to us. And John Nosynek says, read the IMF meeting. He says it's a PR discussion forum and nothing more. A lot of people feel that way, John. A lot of people. Ryan Jaban says, the IMF is focusing on macroeconomic issues, and the World Bank is concentrating on long-term economic development and poverty reduction. Okay, thanks for that clarification, Ryan. Don't know if the World Bank and the IMF will agree with you. Nicole Gittins Kitchenama has also just joined us. Good morning, Nicole. Good to see you. Now, Pilgrims, Friday's edition of the New Today featured the following editorial. It is captioned, "Unfortunate." Is this for real? Why would Grenada move to establish diplomatic relations with one of the most brutal regimes in Eastern Europe, known as Uzbekistan? This decision, taken by the Keith Mitchell-led New National Party government, is quite baffling, given the international track record of the regimes that have ruled the country since the collapse of the Soviet Empire and the dismantling of world communism. It is well documented that Uzbekistan has been condemned by international human rights bodies for harassing and jailing independent journalists and preventing political opponents of the government from operating freely in the country's electoral process. It is interesting that the current Minister of Foreign Affairs, Peter David, was a member of the New Jewel movement, which constantly criticized late Prime Minister Eric Gary and his Labour Party government for establishing ties with the bloody Pinochet military regime in Chile. 45 years later on, another administration in Grenada is establishing diplomatic ties with a regime in Eastern Europe with one of the most brutal records when it comes to human rights abuses and harassment of political opponents. The New Today gives an insight into the newest friend at the international level and its track record within the past 2 years. from an international human rights watchdog body. Uzbekistan has been known as a deeply authoritarian state since becoming an independent republic after the fall of the Soviet Union. The rule of President Islam Karimov, which lasted more than a quarter of a century, was notorious for gross violations of human rights, widespread corruption, and isolation from the world. Human rights defender Elena Erleva was illegally detained, beaten, and forcibly hospitalized in a psychiatric facility in Tashkent for 23 years, preventing her from attending a meeting with representatives of the World Bank to discuss the practice of forced labor in Uzbekistan. Censorship, threats, and harassment against independent thinkers and journalists continued, even if to a lesser extent compared with past years. Independent journalist Bobo Murad Ad Dulavev, who wrote about the internal politics and personal lives of the Uzbek elite on an opposition website under the pseudonym Yuman Haknaz Arov, was detained and placed under investigation. Nurulo Otak Honov, author of the book These Days, which harshly criticized the Karimov regime, was arrested on terrorism charges immediately upon his return from Turkey after living abroad for several years. Lawyers refused to defend Atak Hanov for fear of being persecuted. Narzulo Okhunjonov, a former political radio commentator at the state-run broadcaster Uzmurk, who had left Uzbekistan for Turkey in 2013, was arrested in the Ukraine while seeking asylum, apparently in response to an international arrest warrant issued from Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan's electoral system is designed to prevent any genuine political competition. Party registration is tightly restricted. Vote tabulation is opaque. And ballot stuffing is the norm. The opposition party, Berlik, has been refused registration since the first national elections in independent Uzbekistan in 1991. Imprisonment of political opposition leaders has been an established practice since that time, and there is no true opposition party in the country. Uzbekistan has never held free and fair elections in its history. Uzbekistan still has one of the strictest regimes governing NGOs in the region. After the country expelled almost all foreign NGOs during the 2000s, independent civil society on the ground is practically non-existent. There are strict rules for forming, operating, and funding NGOs or other forms of civil society, and huge administrative and criminal penalties exist for the slightest deviation from the regulations. 3 prisoners of conscience were released after serving long prison terms. Human rights defender Azamjan Farmanov from the notorious Jazlik prison, journalist Solihan Abdurrahmanov from the Sheikh Halik prison, and civil society leader Axam Turganov from Colony Number 49. These prisoners of conscience were held on technicalities or secondary convictions long after their original sentences were completed, a common practice with political prisoners in Uzbekistan. Despite the president's talk of greater religious freedom, key aspects of the state's repressive approach remain unchanged. For example, during the month of Ramadan and the Eid holiday, as usual, children were barred from entering the mosques. Women and girls wearing headscarves continued to face harassment and discrimination. Criminal prosecutions and persecution of religious people continued. The government took credit for the release of some religious prisoners and their acceptance of the state's official version of Islam. But to what extent these released prisoners are voluntarily accepting the state-owned version of Islam is unknown. Mirziyoyev government's, okay, this one's got me. Mirziyoyev's government used Islam in its state propaganda and the enforcement of official and unofficial laws in 2017. Throughout the year, police and NSS agents continued to raid, surveil, seize religious literature, arrest, deport, fine, and sentence and torture without impunity people who practice religion outside the state's tightly prescribed limits, whether Islam or Christianity. Two sisters, Marinso and Julhumur Hamdamova of Kwashi, who were sentenced more than 7 years ago for holding Muslim meetings for women without state permission, had 3 years added to their prison terms after the initial sentences expired. The prominent human rights lawyer, Polina Bronnerg, who represented a number of imprisoned human rights activists and political prisoners, died after suffering a stroke. Uzbekistan authorities had refused to issue her an exit visa to leave the country, despite her needing medical treatment abroad. The above is only a small sample of the regime that Grenada has now chosen to establish diplomatic relations with. The New Today is convinced that there is something underneath the surface that will come to light at some point in time. There is a lot of dirty money floating around in some of these Eastern European states. And greedy eyes in St. George's might be looking to cash in on some of the loot for their own personal advancement politically. Time will tell. Whew. Yes, sirree. Yes, sirree. That was the... I made it through. I survived. Thank you, Lord. That was the editorial which appeared in Friday's edition of the New Today. And by the way, if you thought I was making up these names, you pull out a copy of the New Today. They usually sell out pretty fast, but you may be able to find one hanging around somewhere. Spend your Sunday afternoon trying to pronounce those names. Whew. Whew. Okay. Wow. Now, let me see what I've been missing for the past few minutes while we were going through that. It's 10 o'clock? 10 o'clock? Yeah, okay, 10 o'clock. Oh. John says, getting in bed with Uzbekistan has only one goal. Ill-gotten money. Good morning, Gemma Andrew Church. Good morning, Philbert Lewis. Good morning, Mosquito Man. Good morning, Anthony Howard. Okay. Andre Celestine. Jem the Sheriff is saying good morning. And John says, good job with the names, Gigi. Oh, boy, I tried. My diapers are soaking wet. I wasn't sure I was going to make it through this. Wow. Anyhow, Ryan says Grenada needs caution establishing relations with repressive countries. No kidding. Okay, let me see. Nicole Kitchenama says, these are rogue states not conforming to international norms. Many of these places are known for money laundering and corruption, havens for offshore banking, etc. So, if you need some funds to disappear or access for development projects, it can perhaps be attractive. How is this a benefit to the people of Grenada? Okay, so says Nicole. Then I see that popping up here now, Claudette Joseph is with us, and so is Jeannie Pascal. And Nicole comes back here and says, talk about selling our souls, girl. And it's not just to that country. We're on sale. Grenada's on sale. Except to us. Okay, now, where are we? Let me take another little break.
Hey, what? I just came from the land and this sign here caught my eye. What's that sign about?
Someone must have asked Grenlec to move a pole. But you know, there's no space reserved on the side of the road for planting poles. So Grenlec has to get permission from landowners, and that can take a lot of time.
Oh. Grenlec asked me to help them contact my neighbor Ben about planting a pole on his land. But Ben passed away. His children own the land, but they all live abroad.
That's why Grenlec needs customers to inform them in writing at least 3 months in advance.
3 months? All that?
It seems like a lot, but think about the time it will take for Grenlec to find and get permission from all of Ben's children. And sometimes moving one pole requires you to move the pole before, the one after, plus the wires that support them on the ground. That means even more landowners to find and get permission from. Then Grenlec needs to schedule their teams and notify customers about any power outages.
Well, I need the pole on the farm moved, so I'm going to write Grenlec a letter now.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
GRENADA Community Partnership Initiative, supporting health.
To the individuals who will be using these vehicles to serve the people, please ensure while we are using these tools that we use these tools in a manner that we will all be proud of. To GRENADA, a long-standing partner with us, a true testament of what can happen when private and public sector work together for the benefit of the people.
GRENADA, energizing our community.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
All right, just a couple of quick comments here before we move on to our first feature this morning. First of all, Claudette Joseph saying good morning to the class. Good morning, Claudette. When are you coming to see me again, girl? Jem the Sheriff says, I remember Smokey sang this many years ago. Grenada for sale. How many of you remember that? Eh? Yeah. Floyd Nichols says, we can say all of the same things about Cuba. Yeah. And life goes on. Paul Richard John is joining us. And, yeah, I think that's about it. Okay, folks, now, our first feature this morning. You know that every Friday, Brian and I get together, and I'm again going to ask you guys, remember, if you can, to join us on Friday, and if you can't, go back and watch the archives. This guy always stirs up a hornet's nest. And he did, but a number of issues on Friday. He's going to be joining us here in about half an hour or so, a little less than that. But right now, I'd like you to see what we talked about on Friday. Talked about passports, talked about fiscal irresponsibility, we talked about a whole bunch of stuff. Here goes.
Why have we increased the price of these passports?
Nice segue. Nice segue.
You know, George, when I saw this thing, and I've been reading some social media comments about people talking about the cost of this new electronic passport, and we should all be happy that it's only $250. I said to myself, I wonder what these people are thinking. This is a service that government provides. And every Grenadian, all 100,000 of us, including children, need this document to travel.
Yeah.
Yes? So it's a service that most governments and countries provide for their citizens at minimum cost, because that in itself, George, is not the average person who go to a fete and pay $500 for a VIP ticket and need a passport. There's some little people in the country that need a passport to travel to see their children in the States, or need passports for their children to travel to see their families,
and for medical attention.
So, for whatever you want it. So this is a service, George, that government should not equate with the cost of the service. Now, when I heard that, I said to myself, okay, so where are we going now? Are we going to cost every service that government is providing us and have them charge us for providing that service? Because you're opening a can of worms, I wanted people to realize that this could be the beginning of an increase in the cost of living, because there are a lot of other items that may very well come along if we accept this as being normal, George.
Well, yesterday on the program, I mentioned that what happened now with this increase might be an indication that there are further increases to come. And the reason why I mentioned that is because they specified that what they're going to be charging, $250, is not what it costs to make those passports. It costs more. So this is a heads up that you can expect an increase.
George, remember, I think it was last week or the week before, I spoke about the 1995 election and the removal of all personal income tax pay as you earn?
Yep.
Government now finds itself in a position where it needs as much cash as possible from as many sources as possible. This is to raise funds, George. And I think we have to be careful about how we accept these things. I mean, Grenadians seem to be so passive about accepting everything. And you know what I found by a very informal survey that I did, George? There are a bunch of people in Grenada between the ages of 35 and 45 that consumes and swallows everything that government says to them about what government is doing. It's a strange kind of group of people. So there's an argument out there that, hey, this is a more improved passport, it costs us more, so what are we complaining about? Nonsense. Total
nonsense.
Oh yeah. Maybe Ambrose Phillip has started something, you know. Yeah. You know, maybe this kind of protest will start. You see, this might be the only way that we can get the attention of the powers that be, George, that they are affecting our lives in a negative way.
For people who don't
Yes,
know what
sir.
you're talking about, Brian, explain what you're talking about when you mention Ambrose Phillip. Explain that.
Well, Ambrose went to, as I understand it, I wasn't there, so I can't give a first-hand explanation. Ambrose went to a funeral, I understand, and while at the funeral, his car was parked somewhere in River Road, and the police clamped his vehicle.
I think that was on Cemetery. I think that was on Cemetery Hill, next to Lacroix's crematorium. I think it was.
Well, wherever it was,
okay.
He was. The police put a clamp on his vehicle,
right,
so that he could not move it. I understand that the police clamp vehicles if you are obstructing traffic. Yes?
Yes.
And Ambrose objected to this thing and rested in the middle of the road. The report I heard suggested that he fainted in the middle of the road when he saw his vehicle clamped, which sounds like a reasonable idea, to lie down in the middle of the road. You know?
Yeah.
Civil disobedience. And it will be interesting to find out where this thing goes in. Because civil disobedience might be the way forward for most of us who find ourselves at the other end of decision-making by government.
Brian, good point. I'm not saying that it's right to obstruct traffic or do what Mr. Phillip did. But you know, I've often wondered, how come with all the nonsense that's going on in this country today, we haven't seen any indication of civil disobedience until Ambrose came along?
Maybe that's coming, John, because you see this passport thing? It is dangerous. Now, think of it this way. What else is going to be increased? And when are these increases going to stop, or people decide, listen, I've had enough? Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, if government is going to charge us for every service that they provide, are they going to, if they're going to do renovations at the airport, are they going to raise the departure tax so that they can cover the expense of the renovations? How about security? If they have to provide extra security for us, are they going to put a price on that security and charge us for it? Where is this going?
You're planting seeds. You're giving these people ideas, Brian.
Well, George, you see, this is just one item that will increase the general cost of living. And by the way, our salaries are not increasing accordingly. And we're going to get to that in a minute. But our salaries are not increasing accordingly. So what will happen, George? People might have to work on more than one or two jobs in order to make ends meet. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
If they have to find extra monies to do extra things, or to do the regular things. And think of it this way, George. If both parents or one parent have to work 2 or 3 jobs, to make ends meet at the end of the month, what happens to the children? You see, there are social fallouts, George, to everything, every decision that is made. For every action, there's a reaction. Unless today's economists are not concerned about social fallouts, I believe the government is badly advised here. You're dead silent.
I'm listening, I'm thinking about what you're saying, because you're making sense.
Fiscal irresponsibility legislation.
Well, you saw that article.
This whole debate that is happening about the public workers and their negotiations for salary increases. You know, I have been thinking, George, of the many ways that we use and abuse processes. Now, the IMF put this thing in place, and by law, I believe there's a committee that's responsibility for providing reports on how well we are doing. This said committee, George, as we have discussed before, have put out reports for the last few years and made recommendations in those reports as to how to make this thing work more transparently. But somebody asks you for an increase and you throw that back in their face to say, listen, we are operating under this fiscal irresponsibility legislation put in by the IMF, so we can't give you any.
No, stop. The IMF did not put in a fiscal irresponsibility legislation. They put in a fiscal responsibility legislation. Thank you.
Okay. The name of the legislation, I stand corrected on that. But they throw that forward on every occasion they can to justify the fact that they cannot give an increase to the public workers. They are not telling us what they do with the money they're collecting. Or the committee that was put in place to monitor this process is not convinced that they're getting all the reports that they should be getting to find out how much money they're collecting and what they're spending it on. Yes?
Yeah.
And I am scratching my head, George, to figure out what are these people doing?
Right.
Isn't that we just swallowing everything the government tells us?
Brad, let me explain to you why I'm laughing. I think you're entitled to know. You just mentioned that we don't know what they're doing with the money. Brian, can you imagine, here's an analogy for you. Can you imagine, you have a business. You want somebody to manage it, run it. So you hire a manager and a team. And then at a certain point you say, well, look, Mr. Pitt and your team, tell me how much money you all making. And essentially you're telling me none of your damn business. Brian?
Yes.
Brian, that's what's happening.
And not only you're telling them that, but you're telling me that in 5 years you'll get an opportunity to get an answer.
An
so
opportunity.
In 5 years I could tell you, so in 5 years I could tell you I find oil and gas, and you have to believe that. But George, we use and abuse all these systems, and I ask myself the question, okay, now who appoints this committee that is put in place to look at this piece of legislation and make sure that it's complied with? Because this present committee might very well be replaced if they're not doing what government tells them.
Yeah.
Because government appoints most of these committees to everything. And then they pick up this piece of paper and throw it to the faces of these public workers and say, listen, we can't give you any money because we're not making any money. The economy is doing bad. However, we still have the best or second best economy in the Caribbean. And that reminds me of, during the PRG, George, it was a silent fact that the PRG had two sets of books. They had one for the IMF when the IMF came calling, and they had one for other purposes. Yes?
Yeah.
That was the word on the street. Is this government holding two sets of books? You know, I don't know whether public brokers or the public would go with this discussion, but I think they have a point, and I think they must challenge the newly appointed or newly self-appointed chairman of the negotiating committee that government put together.
Okay, now you're moving into the negotiations, and that's one of the things I have on my little list here, on my shopping list. I'm going to get to you about that in just a minute, but I just don't want to ignore the folks out there. First of all, just moving back to Ambrose Phillip for a minute here.
Yeah.
John says, so you get your car clamped for obstructing traffic. But being clamped means you can't move it. Hence, you're still obstructing traffic. Okay.
You know, let me give you a joke, Joe. This happened on Lucas Street. They clamped somebody's vehicle on Lucas Street, close to a shop that I frequent, while there was a wedding or funeral in the church not too far from that place. You know what that clamped vehicle caused? A traffic jam going all the way up Old Hope and down Cemetery Hill.
I don't have cars, so that ain't no headache for me. Now, here's another comment. Here's another comment. I think you're going to like this one as well. Margaret Francis says, maybe Ambrose is or was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back.
I mentioned, and Margaret would appreciate this, maybe Ambrose is starting something.
Yeah.
Civil disobedience might be the way to get people's attention.
Just maybe. Just maybe.
Yes.
All right. Now, let's get to the negotiations. I sent you two statements last night. Did you have a chance to read them?
Yeah, George.
One was from the government about the negotiations, and the other one was from the unions.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't want to bore the audience this morning by reading those statements, but let me hear your assessment.
Well, I was under the impression that negotiations just began, and that there is usually a number of negotiations taking place before the Labor Commissioner gets involved. It will seem that the Labor Commissioner has interjected himself into the negotiations. And I suspect, again, it is based on this piece of legislation that the IMF left us in, this fiscal responsibility legislation, that they're saying, listen, but government hands are tied. You know, they can't do anything. So let's guys come to the table. Let me bring you guys to the table and see how you can accept either 1 or 1.5%. It is a little top heavy. I suspect they're treating the unions with a little bit of contempt, George. They believe they have the upper hand. I don't know why. I guess only time will tell.
You know, I found the release from the government very cynical, and they seem to be just provoking stuff, because I don't believe the union's going to sit and take what was being said.
Well, I believe that the government's position is, they seem to be negotiating from what they believe to be a position of strength. And the strength that they have is this piece of legislation. That is what they're betting, that the people of Grenada will understand that we just came off an IMF program. And as part of that program, to maintain economic stability, we have to put a cap on spending. But on the other side of the coin, they're not telling us how much money they're making and what they're spending it on. Yes?
But
there are programs, George, that are increasing in numbers, whether it's the Imani program, whether it's there are all kinds of different names for all kinds of, there are a lot of programs happening in Grenada right now, of all kinds of different names, huh? And most of those could be classified as vote-getting. Could be classified as vote-getting. If that is true, then the regular public servants are doing it.
But Brian, look, isn't this Fiscal Responsibility Act apparently being used selectively? Look at what happened. Hold on, they're trying to use it against the unions right now. Brian, in recent memory, look at what happened with the pay for vacation leave. Brian, look at what happened with cell phone gate. Brian, the list goes on and on and on. So it's selective use, isn't it?
But you see, that is why I said earlier, we are using and abusing systems that are put in place for us, yeah? Let me give a classical example that is happening right now. In the world today, if I do not like you, I call you a terrorist.
Yeah.
Whether you're a terrorist or not, I call you a terrorist. Because there is a definition of terrorism that gives me a certain freedom to do what I want with you. Am I not correct? You know, if we got to discuss the Constitution of Grenada, the Constitution of Grenada gives the Prime Minister some rights and privileges to appoint almost every committee in this place. Though he might very well say, but that's a democratic right. But that is abusing democracy, isn't it? You know, somebody wrote a piece the other day, George, which I find very interesting. It went something like this: democracy, saving democracy from capitalism. How do we save democracy from capitalism? Because in this capitalist world, are very few people making all the decisions for a lot of people. Yes, George?
Yes, sir.
So we're abusing everything, and we will continue to abuse it as long as we can get away with it. So if government can get away with putting this piece of legislation on the table, anytime anybody have a conversation with them, what if you're not abusing it?
All right. Brian, I snuck you in this morning ahead of the national report.
Yes.
Which means that we're getting to crunch time now, time to go. However, I just have to get back here because it seems like Margaret and I are thinking alike here. She says, if government's hands are tied, then tell me, how come Sheldon run a $70,000 phone bill and they ain't recouped that yet? Tell me, how come government find money to pay KCM security? Eh?
Yes. You see, George, that again is us abusing the system. We're abusing the system. It's convenient for us to do that right now. And the majority of people must understand that. Otherwise, they will continue to abuse us.
Crapo smoke, we pipe. Here's one for you from John says.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
Go ahead. No. In some circumstances, this might be called bullying. Eh? They're bullying us.
Well, Brian, says John, an IMF program was based on the figures the Treasury provided. True or false?
An IMF program was based, yes, true.
Okay, so do you know...
Who gathers those? The Ministry of Finance gathers those figures. No independent body gathers those figures.
Which raises a question, Brian. I mean, you read the FROC report, so you know that FROC is concerned about the data that they are being provided. Okay?
Yes.
Could the same be happening with the IMF and they're turning a blind eye, or because they don't know the A, B's, and C's about what goes on here, they just can't catch certain things?
Yeah, but in most IMF reports, George, if you read the fine print, they complain about what is happening here. For example, I think the last report, they put in a statement there says that we need more sustainable jobs. They're not saying that the economy is doing badly. But if you don't have a sustainable job, the economy can run into trouble. Yes? So you have to read between the lines of a lot of these reports in order to get the true story.
Kipling Francis says, right now, Grenada is being run by a private club. Members only. You agree?
Yes, yes, yes. I agree. I agree. There are a few people ruling a lot, the majority.
All right, Brian, we got to scoot, but
yes,
I'm going to put you on the spot now. I want you to give our listeners and viewers a heads up about what's coming their way this weekend, because I understand you're going to be part of a conversation with a colleague there, Mr. Cajecton Hood. You guys are going to be talking. What are you talking about, boy?
George, I hope we get to talk about the privileges and abuses that government has on the Constitution of the country and the Integrity Commission and organizations like that affects governance. Because if we don't have good governance, we're going to get to chaos.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter, George, of analyzing what is abuse. Is abuse not the norm? Because a lot of people out there believe that if you get a kickback, that is the normal way of doing business. They don't see it as being corruption, George.
Yeah.
So I hope we can have an enlightened conversation about the Constitution and the powers that the Constitution gives to the Prime Minister, and whether or not the Integrity Commission is in fact an Integrity Commission. Is there patronage? Is it normal for people to serve on these committees at the whims and fancies of their siblings and or relatives? So it should be an interesting conversation.
Okay. 10:30 Pilgrims on Sunday morning. 10:30. Brian, Pitt, and I'm not saying versus because they're not. I think they both share a lot. No. They both share a lot of ideas in common. Cajecton Hood, okay, former Attorney General. Parting words. Margaret says, and that dependence on figures governments provide is why these IMF reports must be taken with a pinch of salt. When the IMF can spend time in the country talking to the people and experiencing the reality of their daily lives, then we can take the IMF seriously. Margaret has a point there because, I have met with the IMF on a number of occasions when they've come here to do their assessments. And they don't just come in today, file a report, and get out tomorrow. They spend a week or so here talking to people in civil society, the unions, the this, the that, and everybody. So they have a grasp of what's going on.
This is why, George, and this is my parting comment, it is so important to the administration of Grenada right now to have people be loyal to them. So there are people in key ministries, George, who are mainly there for loyalty, not necessarily because they are efficient.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Loyalty is the name of the game.
Okay, let's part with a giggle. Kipling Francis says, they know the ABCs, George. They just don't know where to put the quotation marks. There he goes, Mr. Brian Pitt. That's a little tete-a-tete that we had on Friday morning. And I see that conversation sparked some interest from you folks out there on social media. So let me try and see how many of these I can get in, because Brian's already here. We're still waiting the arrival of Mr. Hood. He's 4 minutes late. Tim Tom Ortega. Let me see. I'm not going to start with Tim Tom. Tim Tom was the last one to come in. So we're just going to go back here and start with John Nosyneck. John says, I know it's a repeat recording that you're running right now. Why did the legal advisor break this news instead of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Peter David? As it's his responsibility. Good question, and maybe Mr. Pitt might be able to answer that in a little while. Gem FM says the Grenada government may have privatized the country and they have not told the public. I told you. He also says social disobedience may be a way to get the government to rethink the way they govern. Well, as you saw in that piece, Jim FM, that's something that we suggested at that time, that, perhaps this may be a turning point. I don't know. Just keep your pinkies crossed. We'll see what happens. And then he says, so when they clamp the vehicle, would it not continue to cause a traffic jam? Why not give a ticket and go to the court to pay it? Well, that's what Jem thinks. Tim Tom Ortega says, who are they giving the ticket to if the driver is not around? Towing the vehicle is a better option. You guys may both have good points. I think we better sit and discuss this with the RGPF. Maybe we should get them in here one of these days. Jeb FM says, capitalism or NNP gone mad? Joan Wellington says, speaking of 2 or 3 jobs, yes, but where are the jobs? They will show up eventually, Joan. Remember, the economy is booming. They will show up. Tim Tom says, taxes are the only way this government can raise revenue. No productive sector. Agriculture is dead, and food import bill is astronomically high. Without taxes, this government can't pay salaries, etc. But they're preaching that the economy is booming. Yumma. Jem says, tickets can be placed on the windshield between wipers. They got the idea of clamping from the USA. Clamping was a second option if the fine was not paid. Are you sure about that, Jem? Doesn't really make sense, does it? And he says, Brian, I refuse to believe that one of my friends, okay, Jem FM, I don't know if you heard what we were saying earlier on this morning, but please, guys, please, you may know what you want to say, and you jump on Facebook on your keyboard, please. When you type, make sure it's something that we can understand. I haven't got a clue what you're saying here. I don't have a clue. Please, we want to understand, we want to get your thoughts out, but please, if we can't understand it, I mean, come on. And I don't always have the time to sit and pre-read this stuff because I'm so anxious to get your thoughts on the air. Okay. Tim Tom Ortega says, for example, the seed program where the numbers of recipients are increasing rapidly. And as a result, the budget for that program was maxed out halfway through the year. Hence the need for the supplementary budget. And John says my headset is wavering in volume. Yeah, you ain't see any wavering yet. Wait until, just let me show you this guy, by the way. See that guy? Look. You know that guy? Recognize him? He was on here just a couple of minutes ago. We're going to take a little break, and we will return. I'll tell you what, Brian and I will get started and kill some time until Mr. Hood arrives. By the way, good morning to you, Harry Gibson. See that he has just shown up. Raphael Joseph is there. Michael Seals, Judy Benoit, Cecilia John. Hello, guys. And Josephine Blanche is there. Richard Nichols. And these folks, by the way, they're all incognito. Ernest Richardson is there. Roger Mitchell is there. Nicole Lindsay is there. Okay. Break time and we'll come back.
In our part of the world, we need to be prepared for natural disasters like storms and hurricanes, even outside of the season. I'm sure you'll agree that keeping our loved ones, homes, and businesses safe is important. So, I came up with a few quick tips to help you stay safe. First, make a family disaster plan and ensure that everyone in your household is familiar and comfortable with it. Remember to add batteries and flashlights to your emergency kit. Now for electrical safety. Familiarize yourself with your electrical panel, as it may be necessary to switch off the power during a storm or flood. Make sure you install a transfer or isolation switch to prevent your generator feeding electricity to Grenlec's line. If trees are too close to power lines, call Grenlec at 237 for advice. By following these easy steps, you will be well on your way to being hurricane ready. Don't be caught off guard by natural disasters. Prepare now. For more information, visit grenlec.com.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Can I have a chicken lunch, please? Large.
Real nice today.
I don't want that.
But you just asked for a chicken lunch.
I don't have problem with the lunch. Afraid the container.
What is the problem with it?
These styrofoam containers, they don't good for the environment. They shorten with life.
What foolishness you telling me? So what you want me to use?
Put my food in this.
Where you get that?
At the food fair, where you could get all biodegradable food boxes and disposable food supplies like cups, plates, anything you could think about. Name it, it's there. And they don't harm the environment. Food fair, taking the lead in cleaning up and protecting the environment. Hey, like you take me advice, you get in your biodegradable food supplies.
Well, girl, I supporting who's supporting the environment. That is why I shop in at food fair.
Food fair, where you can fill your baskets without emptying your pockets. Products distributed by Hubbard's agency, Kirani James Boulevard.
All right. There he is, Mr. Brian Pitt. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, George. I'm doing great. A little overexposed this morning.
With your shorts?
No.
What are you, okay.
You had me on for almost the whole morning.
Yeah.
People must be saying, I mean, there he goes again. What's wrong with George and Brian?
Brian, they're paying attention to you. When Brian speaks, they listen. Actually, John is listening here at Carrico right now, and he says, BP is in the saddle. He usually refers to your Friday morning thing as the pit stop.
Okay.
All right. Mm-hmm. And he says, Kaji is in the hood.
Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, boy. We certainly have some characters here. All right. So, Brian, listen, man. Do you want to just reflect on the incident with Ambrose Phillip for a minute as we wait for Kaji to show up? Do you think that's going to start anything in this place?
I don't know, George. It may not. These are very sensitive times, huh? With the negotiations going on between public workers and the government of Grenada. I don't believe that the economy is doing as well as people think it is.
I don't think people think it is. We're told that it is.
Yes, but a certain group of people, keep spouting the word that is doing well. If we hear these things often enough, we tend to believe them. But when the average Grenadian go to the supermarket, I don't believe they believe that the economy is doing very well because they're paying more for almost everything. Somebody raised a good point this morning, George, about the price of passport, whether or not Grenada has been privatized.
Yeah.
And I was thinking while you were reading that, I have a number of cards in my wallet. I have an NIS card, I have a driver's license card, I have a voting card. Now, if the government were to say, we're going to charge you for the cost of making these cards, what would it do to us? Because basically what they're saying is that the price of the passport is based on a cost of $300.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know where that came from. I hope it's not the official position of the government of Grenada, but that is out there. And there are some supporters of the government on social media with that discussion, with that argument. And that in fact, by charging us $250, they're writing off $50, you know. So it's not a legitimate...
Which is one of those things that concern me, because as I mentioned on the program on Friday, I think it was, to me that was a heads up that you can expect another increase.
Well, you know, the word on the ground, George, is that they might move from 5 years to 10 years, you know. Apparently they're getting some negative feedback, and there is a conversation happening, I understand, of moving this thing from 5 years to 10 years. We see what happens. But you know, people talk.
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of talk out there. But did you see the comparison that was put out? You know, they were trying to give the impression that, hey, listen, man, you think you have it bad, the OECS has it worse. And I think the only other place in the OECS where it's $250 is St. Kitts. And that, sir, is for 10 years. Ours is $250.
You know what's so amazing to me, George, is that they give us this information and they don't seem to be aware that all we have to do is Google. Once we Google, we get information, you know.
Yeah.
So if you tell me something and I Google only to find out that what you tell me is not true, what would I think of you?
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, we have to be careful what we put out there, what we say, or what we write. Maybe they're not talking to you and I.
Yeah.
Maybe they're talking to the people who don't have access to a computer or Google.
I hear you.
And they might believe that their political base is still in the majority in that group of people. I don't know that to be true.
And they believe everything they hear.
Well, you got 15 seats the last time, you know, George. It's still 15 love, because I haven't heard that anybody has crossed the floors yet. So you still have a healthy majority to do almost anything that you want to do.
By the way, Claudette Joseph says it's the official position. The Minister of Legal Affairs said it. Claudette says here $300 is the production cost.
You know, and that worries me, because are we going to have a production cost for every service that government is going to provide to us? This could be the start of something very interesting, you know, and could open a can of worms.
All right. John says, so is a Grenadian passport for just 5 years for $250? Yes, John, it's $250 for 5 years.
Well, that is as of November the 1st.
Okay.
Yes, I think it's $175 now.
Okay. And where is it? St. Kitts is $250 for 10 years. All right.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with those numbers. No.
Yeah, okay. Actually, one island, I'm not sure, I think it's St. Vincent, that's only $50. I could be wrong, but it's one of the islands that's only $50.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There is no justification, George, for increasing the passport to $250 and give that explanation as your reason why. It's silly, to be quite honest with you. But somebody asked the question about why is the Minister of Legal Affairs making the announcement and not the Minister of Foreign Affairs? Maybe the Minister of Foreign Affairs is out of the island, George.
Well, you know, since you brought that up, there's another question I saw on social media last night. Somebody was asking, isn't Peter David the Minister of Labor?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
How come we're not hearing anything from Mr. David regarding the talks between the unions and the government?
Well, I suspect that Mr. David will be the last person you hear from because there's a protocol involved with negotiations. Just before Mr. David gets involved, there's a labor commissioner. And I understand that the labor commissioner has now interjected himself in the conversation. So maybe we'll hear from Mr. David sometime down the road or at Labor Day.
All right. Margaret Francis here is going to take us just a little bit back. Oh, by the way, Reginald Lord, you know somebody?
Yes.
He says, good morning, cousin.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Lord Pitt.
Lord. Margaret Francis says, my neighbor in New York say clamping comes after unpaid tickets or debts add up to the point where it escalates to seizure of property, like the vehicle, okay? Ticket writing is typical first step. Towing is done if the vehicle poses an obstruction that must be cleared immediately. For example, snow emergency routes can be deemed tow-away zones when preparing for a snowstorm. If road paving is scheduled, if a security matter is occurring, in most cases, tow-away zone signs are clearly posted, indicating the dates and times of effect. You've been to New York, you've seen that.
I don't believe, George, that we gave a lot of thought to this decision to buy this piece of equipment and to clamp people's wheels. We make decisions in Grenada on the whim and fancy of somebody, and I don't believe that we gave a lot of thought to this one either. It's like when we decided that there should be a bus route from St. David's to Grand Anse. I think that was in a conversation not too long ago. And all of a sudden, we're not hearing anything about that. Because it seems silly to me and to a lot of the bus drivers in the Grand Anse area. So maybe we'll rethink this situation because of Ambrose.
Okay, I want to talk about Ambrose, but hold on a sec. Margaret finishes off here by saying, finishes off for the time being, she says, clamping a vehicle for blocking a road in the position where it continues to block the road is a jackass judgment, which defies common sense.
Yes, you're right, you're right.
Joe Bow says clamping is about revenue collection.
It would seem that is the purpose, yes.
Okay. Tim Tom Ortega says, Mr. Pitt, stop playing diplomatic. Remember last year around this time with all the industrial disputes, Peter David was silent, as he is, on a lot of issues. The man trying to stay in the good graces of the citizens while he waits to inherit the NNP kingdom.
That's an interesting position. An interesting argument from this gentleman. I think there is a school of thought that follows that discussion, yeah, George? But there's another school of thought, word on the ground is that the elders of the party having difficulty justifying the handing over of leadership. And that might manifest itself sometime very soon as to who in fact will inherit that party from Dr. Michel, if anybody will inherit before the next election. I doubt that very much.
Do you think the man's going to run again?
I think so, yeah. I see no reason. He's not given any indication that he won't.
Well, in the past he did.
Let's put it this way, George. I don't believe that the people of Grenada have any faith in the voice of a lot of the people they're hearing from. I don't believe a lot of the junior ministers have the respect of the people of Grenada. I don't believe a lot of the ministers of government have the respect to the people of Grenada, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, I agree.
But when Dr. Mitchell speak, people listen. So I believe he still demand the respect of the majority of supporters of that party. And they're not ready to change us yet.
Brian, let me ask you something, boy. I'm thinking about this as you're speaking here. Did you see an article in the News today that Franca Bernardine has, she looks like she's going to be the next political leader of the NDC?
Yes. I've seen that article, and I've heard rumblings on the ground that she is the heir apparent to take over the leadership of the NDC. I don't know if that is a wise decision. We have to wait and see.
What concerns you?
You know, Franca is a very respected person, was a very good Minister of Education. But the person to me that is most vocal, clear in thought, and writes very well is Claudia Joseph, you know. And I won't be surprised if the NDC might make another mistake as far as leadership is concerned.
The article, and forgive me if I'm wrong here, but the article seemed to have suggested that if Franca had been at the helm of the party in the previous election, the outcome could have been different. And I say that notwithstanding my firm belief to this day that we did not have free and fair elections. Let me hear you.
That could be true, but we will never know. I, however, believe that a woman as a political leader of the NDC would be a positive for the NDC. I think that Grenada right now might very well entertain the idea of a female political leader, you know, and a female prime minister. I mean, the men have kind of failed over time, and this might be the time for a woman.
Well, look at Samantha McFarland saying, why not? Why not a woman to take over?
I am in total agreement with Samantha. I think we need the female touch, George, right now.
So that could possibly make a difference.
Yes, it could make a difference. It could make a difference. But you need somebody that would be strong, because I suspect that the next election, the next campaign is going to be kind of rougher. So you need a strong woman.
Rougher than the last one?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
You're not making my day, Brian. Samantha McFarland says, I am sorry, Keith has the people's eyes blind. Well, that's essentially what you were saying a little while ago. He's speaking to his base, and they buy whatever he says.
Yes. And his base, I don't know whether his base is getting larger or smaller. You know, Joe. I suspect it's getting smaller. There is a silence. There's a deafening silence in Grenada right now. That concerns me. And I don't know that people are accepting everything that is happening. And one of these days you might very well find just one thing to trigger some more social disobedience.
Again, I want to get to the social disobedience part, but here Nicole Lindsay says, I believe it's time for a woman. We are problem solvers. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, Mr. Pitt.
She's absolutely right. Women have and if we look around the world to women, the female political leaders of varying countries, they have been fairly successful, you know. Possible with the exception of Miss May in Great Britain. And they have been strong and good political, they have provided strong and good political leadership.
All right, so again, time will tell. Now,
while we wait for Kaji.
Can I get in, Mr. Hood?
Sure.
Not Mr. Hood, Mr. Ambrose?
Sure.
Mr. Ambrose. He decided to take a nap in the middle of the road. Okay. What's your reaction to that? Do you believe such a move was justified?
Well, it's not up to me to decide whether it's justified or not. I believe that Mr. Phillip made the decision based on the information that he had at the time. And I suspect, don't write Mr. Phillip off, Mr. Phillip would not have done that if he didn't do his homework. To find out whether it was legal for them to put a clamp on his car in the position that it was at. I don't believe this is something that just happened just like that. Mr. Phillip knows what he's doing.
Okay. All right. And do you think that enough people have observed that action and could possibly use it maybe as a template for social disobedience?
Let me answer this way, George. The last person I know who lie down in the middle of the road, let's put it that way, in Grand Dance became president of the Senate.
Yeah, you're referring to Mr. Humphrey.
Yes. So I don't know. You know, it might be very interesting to listen to what will happen with this debate that is going on about the public workers and government of Grenada.
Okay. And just in case you're wondering why Brian seems to be distracted, it's because walking into the...
I'm not distracted at all.
Mr. Hood, would you just have a seat, please, sir?
I am seated.
Good morning, sir.
Tea or coffee.
There he is. And even before he takes his seat, he's complaining that I gave him...
I'm not complaining. I'm making a specific request. There's a difference between a request and a complaint.
He's making a specific request that instead of water, which I'm having and which I also provided Mr. Pitt with, he thinks it should be coffee.
He said tea or coffee.
Tea or coffee.
Tea is the preference.
Tea the preference. Good morning, Mr. Good. How are you, sir?
I am in good health, I think.
You're in good health?
Yes.
Mr. Hood, you are proving to be a genuine Grenadian.
Well, father and mother, as I know, are Grenadians. I was born at the Colony Hospital, St. George's. Right, so I'm saying for my lineage, I'm a Grenadian. From my birth, I'm a Grenadian. And from any other aspect of my life, I am and will always be a Grenadian.
Mm-hmm. And your track record for punctuality, sir?
In school?
No. On Sundays with George Grant.
Well, that's something entirely different. I didn't apply my mind to that. If you want me to do, I'll do that, but...
Well, you know, we have a procedure around here when people show up late for programs, they are required to bring along a note signed by their mom.
But my mother is dead, unfortunately, so my father also, so you'd have to take a verbal note from me, except you want me to walk with a note which I made. But furthermore, I am a scientist by training, and you told me about 10:30. When I do the approximation,
before.
No, you know. When you called me this morning, well, maybe I misheard. Yeah. Maybe with the passage of time, your hearing is not as sharp as it ought to be. So it's likely you said so, but I heard you say about 10:30. So I do apologize to everybody.
All right.
I hope that suffices.
One way or another, Mr. Hood, we are delighted to have you here with us.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Okay. Now, I explained to Brian a little while ago that what's going to happen for the next few minutes is that George Grant is pretty much going to take a back seat, okay, for the next hour or so. It's 11:04, Brian. See how time flies? For the next hour, sir, I would like you and Mr. Pitt to have a discussion about our Constitution and whether goest our Constitution. Brian just chided me here a little while ago, to be very honest with you. I'm not ashamed of it. He let me have it for making mention that he was not too happy with the way I labeled the segment this morning. And on my website, if you take a look, it says, "Is our Constitution going to hell in a handbasket?" or words to that effect. And that was my way of trying to convey to people who would be with us this morning that, you know, there's some dissatisfaction about the way our Constitution is respected or disrespected.
Well, I share Baron's comment about the labeling. It's a bit colorful.
It's a bit colorful,
to say the least, but and pretty inappropriate. It's not a matter of where the Constitution is going. It's a matter of where we are going, because the Constitution was just meant to be a vehicle to take us along a particular path. And if we now find that it's inadequate, then we need to, in some way, some form or fashion, change it, because we are not to be slaves to the Constitution as such. The Constitution was designed to help order the society. It's like, as the judges say, it's like a contract between the governed, right, and the people who are governing.
Okay.
It's like it's a contractual relationship, which takes on life and takes on breath, you know, and then the courts would give interpretation of certain sections that seem to be a bit opaque and not as clear as one would want it to be. And that's the reason why there's provision for changes in the Constitution. There are certain sections that the framers of the Constitution thought was so important that they didn't want those sections to be changed whimsically, you know, out of any fancy of anybody in power. They decide to change it. So there are certain portions that are protected by a special procedure, the referendum procedure, in which this sitting administration, strangely enough, in spite of the fact that they had 215-0 successes at the polls, they suffered defeat twice when they went before the people to alter the Constitution. But it sends a message that I believe many Grenadians are not capturing. It shows that the Grenadian people are not comfortable with the guidance received by the present administration regarding altering any constitutional provision, whether changing the name to Carriacou, putting Carriacou and all. Whether it simply means putting Carriacou in the name of the state, the people say no. So it sends a message. So my interpretation is that there is something intrinsically wrong with our elections for governance. That's my point. So we need to look carefully at it. You win 15 love twice, one after the other, and you can't get anything changed in the Constitution. You have a walkover in Parliament for the 2/3. And now you need a majority from the people, and you can't even get 50%, and you can't even get a simple majority. Something is wrong. We have to read the message that's coming across.
Well, George, I think it was 15 love 3 times, you know.
Well, no, consecutively twice.
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about.
But you know, how I look at it, the Constitution was written in 1974 or 73 or thereabout, for a time and a period and people. I think when the Constitution was written, there may have been honorable men in politics. Let me put it this way. Let me start that way. So the idea that this document will help the governance of the country with honorable men was at the time fit and proper. Over time, people seem to have a love for power. And that love for power allowed them to use the Constitution or every aspect of the Constitution to their advantage. Now, I'm going to jump forward a little bit to...
Let me challenge that statement. Sure. I disagree with you. The reason why I disagree is because we, the people, are responsible for putting whoever the person is in power.
Yes.
So if you say to me that we were duped into putting some person X in power, we take the blame.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's unfair. I think it's unfair to say that the Constitution was made for a particular type of person. I believe the Constitution was made to govern the people. We know, and I said that last time I was here on George's program, we need to be careful regarding who we put into parliament. That's a problem, and we put them there. So we need to take time as a people and look at the conduct of these individuals. Look at their track record. Look carefully as to whether or not they are independent enough to make decisions that will be balanced. If we choose a group of people who obviously fall under the influence and control of one person, as I said before, you're creating a dictatorship rather ignorantly. So I don't think it is fair to say that we can't blame the Constitution. The Constitution is an instrument that was made that way. But in order to give effect to it, in order to bring it to life and to help us, we need to take the responsibility of putting persons there who have a particular track record and rejecting people. All of this smart talk and whatever it is, all the liquor bribe, the $100 and whatever it is, these things should turn us off and should tell us, look, take the money, but leave these people alone. This is the point I'm making. I don't think it's fair to blame the Constitution.
The Constitution, Kaji, gives a certain amount of power.
Yes.
To the Prime Minister himself, in terms of
for good reasons.
What? Pardon me?
For good reasons, in some cases.
But I have heard you say on more than one occasion that it creates a dictator. If you want it to
not
be
the Constitution.
But okay.
Because I've said there is a possibility of the dictatorship depending.
In other words, the abuse of the Constitution.
That is the point. I will agree with you 100% there.
Yes. Yes.
I will agree with you 100%. Because you cannot create a legal document that's foolproof. And I've learned that from my decades of studying the law.
That's why you have the court, I imagine, because the court can make judgment on certain
I'm
things.
taking a different point. I'm taking a different stand. I'm saying you can't create a legal document that's foolproof, that will not create avenues for abuse. You can't. Because then you create a black and white document that's going to block every single hole. So that's the point I'm making. You will always, Brian, you will always have areas where it's possible to abuse any system or any legal document.
When you look at the Grenada Constitution, Kaji, and the appointments that the Prime Minister has influence in making,
which is not different to most of the Caribbean
I am not saying that it's any different. Maybe most of the Caribbean constitution need to be changed at this point in time.
I am saying, that's why I'm disputing it. I am saying, if you change it, what you may find is a straight jacket system where you're not going to get much done. Hold on, you're going to be stalled in lots of dialogue and debate. Yeah. So therefore, you have to be careful about the person you put there and the persons around that person you put there, that you're going to have some balance. Because you're going to, anywhere you go, Brian, you're going to have a problem. That's why the people have to be more reactive, more sensitive, more educated. And I did raise a lot of noises about education of the people.
From the point of view of checks and balances and good governance, or providing an atmosphere for good governance, don't you believe that this constitution is inefficient?
I don't agree. I think, for example, the Constitution is like the skeleton of your body. Yes? You have to build meat, sinews, other things around it. Yes? And that's the reason why I'm saying where you are going to really have the effective operations that you're talking about are in the ordinary laws that are passed in Parliament.
Does the Constitution deal with the Public Service Commission, for example?
Yes.
And it gives the Prime Minister exclusive right on the majority of people that serve on that commission. Am I not correct?
No, not really. What he does, what he has from a membership of 5, he has recommendations for 3. Yes? He has recommendations for 3. And 2 others, he has to...
3 is a majority.
No, yes, recommendation for 3. I'm coming back to your point. Where I'm telling you why I don't fully agree with you. I will agree with you not on a strong point as you're making. I will agree that he has influence, strong influence on the majority of the members. I will agree. The Constitution tries to block this off or to secure it by saying that these persons there are to be independent. Even though somebody appoints you, it doesn't mean that you are the slave or the puppet of that person. Yes? But that is what it is up front. Yes? You know what is going to happen behind the scenes.
Well, that is what we have to deal with.
No, that's not what we have to do. Let me give you another example. Judges are selected who are supposed to be independent. Right? And I'm sure there are many cases in which judges are not independent in their passing the judgment.
But you have several layers of appeal.
But also, as I am doing right now, you have areas of appeal. You can challenge what the Public Service Commission does. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's a parallel. You appeal what a judge says. You can appeal what the Public Service Commission says, because in the Constitution you have you have a Public Service Board of Appeal, and then you still have the courts. And you're still back into the court system.
Don't you
understand the point I'm making?
Yeah, I understand the point you're making.
There is a balance. No, but I don't want to run away from the point with that.
Mm-hmm.
I have been scathing in my criticism regarding the influence that the executive has had over the years on the Public Service Commission's decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I've challenged quite a few. I'm still challenging quite a few.
Okay.
So I'm leaning towards what you're saying, but the language I think is wrong. That's the only point. That's the only point. That's the only point. And then the other issue is that, in terms of what I think is weak in the Constitution, is the membership challenge, which can only go through the Prime Minister. So the question is he going to go to the Governor General to remove somebody who he put in? I don't think so. You see? So I think that's a weak point.
Can I just jump in here for a second, because there are a couple of comments I want to get on here. Judy Benoit says the Constitution also puts a limit on how much power the Prime Minister has by setting up independent departments, PSC, Parliamentary Elections Office, RGPF, audit, etc. And then Ryan Jabon says some constitutions, especially codified constitutions, also act as limiters of state power by establishing lines which a state's rulers cannot cross, such as fundamental rights. Cajecton, is that the case of the Constitution in Grenada?
Yes, of course. Of course, of course. One of the changes that was debated was to spell out more clearly some of the fundamental rights that are in our Constitution. Yes, because some of them were not as clear. And well, I gave you my comment already as to why they were not selected by the people.
Okay. Yvonne Joseph says, the problem is Grenadians at home alone voted for constitution change. But the reason why the present government keeps winning elections over and over is because of the people the PM brings in from overseas to vote for his party.
I don't think it's enough. I know in the 2003 elections it played a part in the 7-vote success in Carriacou, because eventually it was an 8-7, and the small difference in Carriacou was because of the plain load, I understand. But generally, I don't think it's as significant, in my view.
Margaret Francis says, if the Constitution wanted to block the PM's influence in the Public Service Commission, then the PM should have had 2 appointees and the others as independents.
You see, George, this is my argument, that the Prime Minister, Kaji, you were the Attorney General, and I remember as a result of that, a member of Cabinet, yeah? Is it true that the Prime Minister is first of equals among equals when he sits in Cabinet? And in fact, let me explain.
You need to explain, yes.
Yes, I explain. So that if Cabinet is debating an issue, and the majority of people in Cabinet agrees on a particular point, that the Prime Minister's position and or point carries?
If he is not in the majority?
Yes.
No, I disagree with you. I totally disagree with you.
Tell me what happened.
It depends on how...
Tell me what happened.
Don't tell me to tell you what happened.
Okay.
I can't tell you what happened.
Well, not what happened. So we have...
Brian, you control your language. Stop it.
Yes.
Next you'll have people think I'm going to snitch and tell you.
No. Theoretically.
No, it depends, not theoretically, it depends on the...
Let me explain.
No, you don't need to explain. I understand what you're trying to say.
Okay.
It depends on the mode in which.
Well, I don't want you to understand what I'm trying to say. I want to see what I'm saying.
Let me see what I'm saying.
Okay. All right.
It depends on the mode in which decisions are made among the group. Yes.
Yes.
There's not a necessity for a vote. Nobody says you have to have a vote.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Cabinet decisions generally are made through submissions, through the ministers who would table the submissions for approval or otherwise. The question of the agenda of the cabinet meeting is being set by the cabinet secretary.
All right.
Yes. And there is debate. There is debate on the topic, and then a decision is made. And later on, the decision is confirmed at a subsequent meeting. I don't think it is fair to say that even if the Prime Minister disagrees, and a majority of members agree that it will always go to Prime Minister's way, I don't think that's a fair statement.
Not always.
Let me finish.
Yes.
Of course, the Prime Minister, because of the power that he wields, would have an influence, whether directly or indirectly, or based on perception, based on intimidation, otherwise, would have an effect on what happens in the cabinet. Because remember, the Prime Minister is the one who decides who's in the cabinet.
Right.
Okay, guys, could you just give me half a sec here? I want to try and sneak a call in. Good morning, you're on the air. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Yes, sir.
Citizen Grant?
Yes, sir.
Greetings. Can I throw a question out there?
Yes, sir.
I'll do that quickly, yes. Listen, I'm so interested this morning in this conversation. So I'd like to ask, particularly Cajecton, this is Citizen Rollo. The constitution of this country that we're talking about, is it legitimate? First question. Second question, if it is, can you tell me, or tell us the people, how, when, and where it gained its legitimacy? Thank you very much, and do have a nice day, will you?
Hello?
Yes, sir?
Yeah. Caller, just hold on a sec. For some reason, these gentlemen aren't
I beg your pardon, sir?
Just hold on a second here. For some reason, just hold on a minute. They're not hearing you, so just... Okay, we're gonna try again. Repeat your question to me, please, caller, and I'll pass it on to them. Caller? Caller? Caller?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, say again your question, and I'll pass it on to my guest.
I beg your pardon?
Would you please repeat your question? And
I have two questions. The first is this. Is the Constitution, or so-called Constitution of Grenada, really legitimate? Two, if it is, can you tell the people of this here country how, when, and where it gained its legitimacy?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. The caller wants to know if the Constitution of Grenada is legitimate, and if so, when and where did it gain its legitimacy?
It's an instrument which came out of our independence.
So first of all, you do believe it's legitimate?
I don't understand the question about legitimacy. Is our independence legitimate?
Okay, that's the point that the caller was making.
Well, the point is that it came out of discussions which brought into being our independence, our independence constitution.
There was some conversation some time ago about whether the constitution was legitimate or not. But George, I want to go back to this.
But that's a technical.
Yeah, it was a technical. It was a technical point. But some time ago, George.
George, you understand the point I'm making?
Technical, like Kaji, yes, but couldn't the technical point be questionable?
In what sense? It depends on what technical point you're raising. The point is that there was debate, right? There was debate, and there were opposition members and members of the government had discussions in London. Yes, and out of that came out a document, the Constitution of Grenada. So I don't. If you want to challenge the legitimacy,
you're challenging the court.
Well, that's one point. That's one point that could have been done 40-something years ago, right? And even if now you want to say it's not legitimate, the 40-something years must come for something. Why after 40-something years you trying to challenge its legitimacy?
Kachi,
Yes.
let me present you with a scenario.
Yes.
On the point that we were discussing earlier.
So we change it from legitimacy?
No. Well, yeah.
That's
we're going to legitimacy.
That doesn't merit much discussion, yes.
Let's say there are 15 members in cabinet. And 14 of the members in cabinet, through whatever the process is, have decided that, listen, we need to change the name of St. George's to Brian. And it goes to a cabinet meeting for discussion.
Somebody brings it up. Somebody
brings it up, makes it up. And then the Prime Minister decides, nah, we're leaving it as St. George's. Does the name change or does it stay as St. George's?
I do not understand. Because the Prime Minister may have a view of it. And maybe after expressing his view very strongly, the 14 people
would agree with him. I like the diplomacy.
No, that's not a matter of diplomacy. I'm trying to say to you, it's a matter of discussion and what comes out of it. Because I can back down from my initial position.
Yes.
Or I can be influenced by discussions before the cabinet. There's a variety of things.
I agree, Kachi. Some time ago, remember Randolph McIntosh?
Yes.
Randy had this position that given the complexities of the Grenada Constitution, that it should be rewritten totally. Is that a good position?
No, I can't comment on it's good or bad.
Was that a reasonable position? Because a lot of legal luminaries did not agree with him. And one of the reasons they did not agree with him, if I recall, was that they couldn't get this thing past the Prime Minister.
I wouldn't know that. I wouldn't know why they didn't agree with him, but in terms of right.
But is that a good position in order so that we can put some more checks and balances in there about how committees are appointed, etc., so that he does not have the kind of power that he has?
I don't understand what you mean by rewritten. If you are saying that the Constitution should be amended, there's a procedure. There's a procedure for amendment.
Yes.
It depends on which parts of the Constitution need you.
Could you amend the whole thing?
What do you mean by amending the whole? You mean dumping it and just getting a new thing, Brian? That doesn't make sense.
She is being a lawyer.
So Randy's position was.
I think you're misrepresenting Randy's position.
Okay.
And I'm trying to get it out of you what you're getting at. If you're saying you want to amend the Constitution, yes? I cannot conceive.
Is there a process to rewrite the Constitution?
Go ahead. I just said to you, you have the Constitution as a base of our independence, yes? If you want to see throw it out and have nothing for a period of time, I don't understand that concept. If you say anything else, it's just to change it. And I'm sure you don't want to change everything in the Constitution. There are portions that you would want to change because there are parts, however critical you are, there are parts of it which must be there.
Okay, yeah.
So you are talking about amending parts, and I'm saying to you, there are certain parts that have a special procedure for amendment, and you have to follow those procedures. And there are certain parts that don't have that special procedure.
All right. Actually, just give me a sec here because I have another caller. Caller, they may not be able to hear you.
No, we can't hear you.
They can.
Well, I haven't said anything yet, so you don't know if you can hear me or not.
Hold on, guys. Hold on. Go ahead, caller. Tell me your question, and I'll pass it on to them.
No. I can't question these kind of high-ranking fellas you have there, but I want to make an observation.
Go ahead.
The observation has to do with the fact that our existing constitution, now an imperial order in council, has been recommended to be replaced by one which is an enactment of the Parliament of the state, by which the citizens, through their elected representatives and after a public referendum, would formally proclaim the Constitution as their own. In other words, the fact that we had independence handed to us on the 7th day of February 1974 by the Parliamentary Undersecretary for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs in the United Kingdom. Hansard of that meeting of Parliament discloses that there was no debate on these instruments, nor was any resolution passed for their acceptance. That is why I take the view that I, in fact, am not a citizen of Grenada, but merely a subject of Her Imperial Majesty in the wonderful country of England. I am supported in that view by various legal luminaries, because joke is joke, but what I'm reading from is the Constitution Review Commission, constituted of Justice Nicholas Liverpool, Chairman, deceased, Professor Randolph McIntosh, deceased, Mr. Carroll Bristol, QC, deceased, and two other gentlemen whose names I won't call because they're still alive. Do have a wonderful day, subjects.
Okay, Quarter, thank you. This gentleman said so much here. I think it's impossible for me to repeat everything that he said. What I'd like to do here is take a little break, and we'll come on back after this.
Because your vehicle is a necessity, being roadworthy is critical. Hubbard's Motor Department introduces its new tire and battery sales and service outlet located at Building Supplies Compound in Grand Dance, close to the Sugar Mill Roundabout. Available are a wide range of competitively priced tires, maintenance-free batteries, oils and lubricants. Keeping in mind your busy schedule, this outlet is equipped to provide you with fast and reliable service. Simply drive in and you'll be delighted with your service experience. For more information, contact 440-2087. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Hey, what? I just came from the land and this sign here caught my eye. What's that sign about?
Someone must have asked Grenlec to move a pole. But you know, there's no space reserved on the side of the road for planting poles. So Grenlec has to get permission from landowners, and that can take a lot of time.
Oh, Grenlec asked me to help them contact my neighbor Ben about planting a pole on his land. But Ben passed away. His children own the land, but they all live abroad.
That's why Grenlec needs customers to inform them in writing at least 3 months in advance.
3 months? All that?
It seems like a lot, but think about the time it will take for Grenlec to find and get permission from all of Ben's children. And sometimes moving one pole requires you to move the pole before, the one after, plus the wires that support them on the ground. That means even more landowners to find and get permission from. Then Grenlec needs to schedule their teams and notify customers about any power outages.
Well, I need the pole on the farm moved, so I'm going to write Grenlec a letter now.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
Alrighty, folks, I'm back with my guests, and on the left of your screen there, Mr. Brian Pitt, and on the right, former Attorney General Cajecton Hood. Gentlemen, just before I hand it back to you, there's a comment here from Neri Mary, whoever that is. Neri Mary says here, the way in which the government abuses the Constitution to carry out their injustices, one must question its legitimacy. Kaji?
Strange.
Well, Joe, I think
why question the legitimacy of the Constitution if somebody abuses it? So the comment is confusing. At least it confuses me.
But you see, does the Constitution, I've heard you say, correct me if I'm wrong, Kaji, that the Constitution allows an individual to act or be a little dictator?
No, I didn't say so.
Okay, well, tell me what you said.
I said, if we are not careful, based on the powers that are exercisable by the Prime Minister, if we're not careful with the selection of persons around him, based on his influence on these persons, we could very well be.
Does the Constitution give him those powers?
Which powers are you?
The powers that you are suggesting that he has, the power to appoint the majority of people on the Public Service Commission, the power to recommend who is the Governor General, the power to decide who is going to be on the Integrity Commission. There are some powers that he has in his hand to make certain appointments, to control certain things. If that is true, then is there any way we can amend the Constitution to remove some of these powers from him that would provide more checks and balances? I think that's the question.
Certainly. One would have
and should we be thinking of that?
One would certainly have to look at it. Look at what proposals can be put forward. But the point I was making basically is this. A number of these decisions presuppose, and that's why your question before was very pertinent, presupposes a number of your questions presuppose a determination by the cabinet, not just a single person.
Right.
So, and the principle is that the cabinet is jointly and severally liable for decisions that have been made.
Collective decision.
Yes. So if the person, that's the reason I'm saying, if the persons in there are independent and strong enough, you'll have more balanced decisions. That's the concept. You'll have more balanced decision. That's where my reference to the dictatorship comes in. Because if you have weak persons who are basically controlled by one person, then in effect you have a dictatorship, because the other persons around that one strong person will be doing that one strong person's will in the name of everybody. That's the point I was making.
How can I disagree with the Prime Minister and remain in cabinet?
Well, to me, you ought not to be thinking about remaining in cabinet per se.
Once you disagree, you should leave.
No. You ought to be thinking about putting forward your opinion.
Okay.
Whatever happens afterwards, it's somebody else's decision. Your decision has to be, look, that is the correct thing to do based on all the information that I have and whatever it is, and I put forward my opinion.
So your argument is the Constitution is good as it is, but we should be electing 15 strong people, or 14 strong.
I'm not saying that. I am saying one ought not to fall along on one side or the other. It's not black and white. I think it's a composite of both. I believe that there are areas that need to be changed, right? But I think in the meantime, and even after now, whatever changes are made, you need to have strong, independent persons in the lower house.
All right, while you guys take a breather on that, let me ask you a question here. Margaret in New York wants to know, Mr. Hood, specifically, what are some of the powers which hold the potential to make a little Hitler of the PM?
Interesting question, Kaji.
A little Hitler.
Well, Hitler might be as strong.
No, I would say that there are several, Brian mentioned a few of them, but there are several powers that are there which allows for that. If he is a person who decides who belongs to the cabinet, because there are persons who win the constituency
and can sit in the Senate,
and they are not in the cabinet, and he can bring in who he wants to be in the cabinet. But on the other hand, there is a fact that it is the persons in the lower house that decide who is the Prime Minister at the end of the day. And sometimes we forget that.
But the party decides who is political leader.
Political leader and Prime Minister are not the same, Brian. They are not the same.
But
Brian, stop it.
But
right
isn't the practice? Isn't that the practice?
Brian, are we talking practice or are we talking provision? If you're talking about practice, then you're going somewhere else. I don't want to talk practice. I want to talk about what provision is there, because we're talking about the Constitution and the provisions. It is the members of the House of Representatives. That's why I've been focusing on that and not so much on the issue of who's in cabinet.
But let's stay with Marcus' position for a minute.
Let me finish what I'm saying.
Yes.
In other words, it is the persons in the lower house who decide who is the Prime Minister. So my point is that if you have strong independent persons in the lower house and this guy who is the Prime Minister acts up, you can come together and say to the Governor General, we don't support this guy anymore. He does not have our support. And that's the reason why I'm saying you need the strength of character in the lower house. So if this gentleman decides, okay, I'm flinging you out of cabinet and there's no good reason, I'm doing this and there's no good reason, then you can move. And I think this is the basic problem. Now, going back to the question of the Constitution, I am saying, one, he selects the Governor General, and I'm saying that ought to be a collective decision, and I've always clamored for that selection process to be subject to at least some parliamentary debate, like happens in the United States. If you're going to go into any top government position, there is a debate at the House level, at the Senate level. They look into your history, what you do when you were a little boy. If you are playing KKK...
So we need to amend our constitution so we can have something similar?
No, I'm not saying it doesn't have to be an amendment. I'm saying that's where the practice comes in. That's where the practice comes in. If we work into our system a practice where things are open and the public knows who's getting the appointment and the public knows who the person is, what the person's history is, then I believe a lot of these things will be averted. For example, you select a man who ran for your party, for office as the head of the Public Service Commission. I think that's a glaring problem.
Yeah, but how do we stop that from happening, Mr. Hood?
Yes, I don't have the magic formula, you know, Brian.
But if not amending the Constitution, how do you? Is there a committee within Parliament that will say, let's change this?
No, I accepted before, early in our talk, that there are sections which need to be changed, and I think we need to sit.
Is there an urgent need for that?
Analyze the Constitution and select the areas that we agree need to be changed, and also at the same time come up with proposals going forward. I am saying that I don't have it in front of me, so don't expect me to tell you what is this section, that section, that section.
Before we get too far behind, Brian, a little while ago you asked a question, and Tim Tom Ortega says, good question, Brian. That's why Kaji stayed in there and said nothing, because he knew the minute he spoke up, he was going to get kicked out.
No, that's not the reason. The reason is because if you enter into an August group like that, you have certain undertakings regarding disclosing the discussions. And that's the reality. You have an obligation, and that's what you sign on to, that except with the leave of the head, the Prime Minister, you can't disclose the discussions. I don't know what the guy's name. So is he saying that what I should be doing, sneaking out cabinet discussions or some third party? Is that what he suggested?
You may get an answer to that question.
No, I want to know if that's what
I think he's suggesting that if you feel strongly enough about a decision that was taken,
yes,
that you leave.
Well, it depends on what the decision is, and then the other issue is that, am I then saying that I am the only repository of wisdom?
No, not at all.
No. So I am saying, if something comes up for debate, I take one position, and the majority takes another position, I should leave.
How does a member of cabinet...
No, answer the question I'm asking you.
How does a member of cabinet object strongly to a position that he's not in favor of? How does he do that?
There's a debate, just as though we are debating it.
Within cabinet?
Yes.
Okay.
Just as though you tell me you don't agree, I say I don't agree. But then a decision is made based on the majority view. So I may disagree, and I say I don't agree. What does that mean?
At the last referendum we had,
yes,
there was an overwhelming discussion about the CCJ and The legal luminaries in Grenada decided that the most important issue,
their opinion,
the most important issue was our joining the CCJ. Which is more important? Us joining the CCJ or us amending the Constitution so that we relieve the leader of the country of certain powers which might move towards more transparent governance?
I can't answer that question, but I think what came out, there were certain issues.
But is more transparent governance not important at this point in our history? Is that important in this point in our history?
Of course, it's important, but
how important is it?
I'm trying to answer your question,
okay.
But you're barging a bit. The point is that there were about 6 or 7 issues that came up. There was a process, and there were 6 or 7 issues that were identified for amendment. I don't think it was an exhaustive list of topics.
Right.
And there are other issues that could have and would have come up and were not considered.
I agree. So
which is more important? I cannot say which is more important.
Is transparent governance an issue in Grenada right now?
For me?
Yes.
Yes.
It is?
Mm-hmm.
How important is that for us going forward?
Us, you're changing from me to
you
us.
and I and George.
No, I want to talk for myself.
I want you guys to give me a chance, because people out there have some questions they want to fire at you guys.
Okay. Go ahead.
First of all, was KCM ever not going to be PM with his underlings kowtowing for a good position in government? Kipling says maybe if we could ban the PM from visiting Haiti, things might change a little. Ryan is asking, can the Prime Minister be impeached according to the Grenada Constitution?
I think we focus too much on U.S. politics.
I think you brought it up, so.
No, I didn't bring up impeachment. I said
appointments.
I said specifically that in our Constitution, all there is that if the members of the lower house no longer support him, he can't be Prime Minister.
All right. Somebody says, Samson Perry, whoever that is, says, Cajecton, why are you so defensive today? Did you have a chat with the PM recently? Hold on.
Oh my God, yes.
Hold on. Did you have a chat with the PM recently? Oh, I forgot. He was the GG the last time around.
Who was the GG?
You have to ask this person, Samson Perry. And again, I'm sick and tired of having to beg people to please think about what they're publishing, what they're posting, because some of it is so incomprehensible. Anyhow, let's just move on.
And you find them defensive, George?
Diplomatic.
No, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about these people out there.
I've changed that. I've got... No, you find I'm defensive? I don't think I'm defensive. Brian trying to go places that he shouldn't go. I don't know. Trying to pull him back to make sure he says what he should say.
I'm just going to ignore a lot of these comments because some of these people, I don't want to describe them the way I really feel. Please, think about what you're typing. Think. Okay. Gentlemen, we only have about 15 minutes left. If that much, actually 12 minutes left. You guys want to wind down your discussion on this Constitution? How can we start really using the Constitution for what it was intended?
I don't know if we're not using it for what it was intended. I think Brian did make the point that there are some of the provisions that are more susceptible to abuse based on who has the reins of power, and I totally agree with Brian. It's not that, for example, there are certain protective provisions that are in the Constitution that in our Constitution that's not in any other Constitution in the Caribbean. Anywhere else, the 84 provision that when you remove somebody else, they have to treat them as though they are retired. at 80 that's in no other constitution. So there are some ample provisions there. And there are some areas where there are weaknesses. And you have to remember the time of the formation of the Constitution, the fathers of the Constitution, so to speak, were looking at what they perceived to be the most impending threat to our independence. Remember the Gary fear that you're just kicking people all over the place and do whatever you want in the public service. So that provision was put there. So you have to look at the Constitution in that context in terms of how it came to be and what really they were looking at to protect. And that's why I say to you, the Constitution would need certain changes because we are now, how many, 40-something years down the line. Obviously there are different threats now that we would not have seen before 40-something years ago. So there are areas that absolutely need to be changed in order to be more transparent, to make sure that the democracy that we have in Grenada really is growing and really suits the current international trends. I totally agree. But we need to look at it carefully to make sure that the changes we intend to make are efficacious.
How should we have that discussion? I mean, we're having this loose discussion this morning. And is the aim, as you said, transparent governance and checks and balances? Because
Yes.
the idea of appointing, let's say, George to head the Integrity Commission.
Yes.
Yes? George might not be qualified to head the Integrity Commission, or George might have a sister. I heard this thing, Kaji.
So maybe there should have been a parliamentary debate on it? So everybody knows who's George?
I heard this discussion somewhere, that because of the size of Grenada, that we cannot avoid having family in key positions.
That's nonsense.
But of course it's nonsense. But you know what's even worse, George? I mean, Kaji? When an international organization like the Commonwealth Committee agrees that to be true,
what to be true?
That we cannot avoid having relatives in key positions in this whole aspect of governance. I mean, that is so ridiculous. It's a shame because members of families could have different opinions.
You know what comes to my mind, George? Incest.
Yes.
Right. So you must have a cutoff.
So that is nonsense.
So whether it's brother, family could be pumpkin right cousin, as we say. Fine, pumpkin right cousin is alright, but close cousin, no.
So we need a process that will closely examine how we appoint people in certain positions.
In positions of influence.
In positions of influence and transparency. Yes?
No, I'm saying.
But could we do that without amending the Constitution?
Constitutions are given effect not only just by amendment but by practices.
Let's say the Integrity Commission, which you were part of setting up.
Let me make my point.
Yes.
The Integrity Commission is not constitutional.
Right. This is why I raised that point. That could be done without.
That could be done by SRNO or something.
Okay, good.
That's another point. But I'm saying constitutions change not just by amending the words but by practice.
Yes.
So for example, if a certain practice is adopted, it effectively imposes itself on the practice of the Constitution in future.
All right. There's a comment here from Andy Smart. Andy says, of course, changes can be made to the Constitution. However, the consensus has to come from the Cabinet and the Prime Minister's willingness to accede to such a position. The lack of opposition in the lower house also affects any motivation to begin these discussions.
I agree, because you have to have the 2/3 in Parliament first before it goes to the people. So there has to be a willingness from the political leadership, because you have to have a 2/3 in Parliament.
Because in fact, that was a discussion in the two referendums that went before and the debate that we had. What could we put before the Prime Minister that will allow him to agree to put this thing forward? Yeah? There was that discussion.
What could we do?
What could we put on the table for amendment that the Prime Minister would agree with?
Well, there were several things that were put, and if you didn't agree with it, For example, term limits, which I thought was a positive move.
And you didn't agree with it? So that did not...
Not he didn't agree with it. People didn't agree with it. That's what I said.
Okay.
It went forward.
Well, no. I think the term limits was 2, and he went to 3. The suggested term limits was 2, and he suggested 3.
I am not sure of that. I don't think that's true.
Okay. Well, I stand corrected.
I don't think. I think it was 2, and there was a possibility of, like the United States, which never happens anyway. There's a possibility. There's a break, and then a possibility of coming back. Well, it never happens. When somebody gets out of that office.
But if I remember, Kaji, I think the majority of people in all the discussions that were taking place suggested 2. It got to him, and he said, "No, we ain't going with that."
I think it went to 2. I'm not sure on it. I think it went to 2.
Yeah.
And then there was a question of having a precise date for elections, which I thought was a good thing, like the United States, because once the election is gone, you know when the next election is going to be.
And he disagreed.
It went, and it was not voted. It was not accepted.
Cabinet agreed.
It went to the people, and it was not accepted. You're not listening to me, Brian. Go back and see what went of the 6 which went.
All right, gentlemen. See how quickly this time went by? Brian, when Brian came in here earlier on, he thought, an hour and a half,
because he was alone. He was alone, that's why.
No. You see, the man made me set up.
Time drags on when you're alone and lonely. When you get company, it goes much faster. That's the reason why. That's what happened. He was lonely, George. With somebody else, then things go much faster.
Well, let me ask you guys this. Maybe down the road, not saying when, but maybe down the road you might want to have another...
No, I think you have to have a specific discussion on...
Well, yeah, down the road...
You know what I thought about this morning, George? Civics. And how do you get kids to answer questions on the Constitution? One question that came in my head in a civics paper was, please let me know the powers that the Prime Minister has, or the powers given to the Prime Minister by the Constitution, as a question on a paper for kids in school to answer. They will obviously have to go through the Constitution and say, okay, he appoints the Governor General, he appoints the Public Service Commission, he da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And let me tell you something.
What do you want
when the kids go through that process, George, I think they will conclude that the powers given to the Prime Minister by the Constitution could make him a little dictator.
Why do you want children to do that and not force?
Because we have to start studying the document.
Hold on. Why not force our education system to have a civics
that will allow that
subject?
Kind of discussion? Yes.
So that you teach children in school these things.
That's the teacher in you, and I appreciate that.
Because we used to, I remember growing up in primary school, we used to have civics.
Yes. Me too.
Where we learn things about our country. You done away with that?
Yes.
So hence the reason why our young people are not studying about this thing again, studying party. They have no time for these things anymore.
All right. Margaret says, and I want you guys to listen up carefully. Margaret says, I think they should become a regular feature and break up the Constitution into parts for discussion. Let's say, Audia.
Good idea.
Margaret, let's see, agree with you. All right. And Brian, I also like your idea about talking to the kids. A few years ago, I used to do a program on Chime FM where we would bring kids from various schools in here and let them loose, Fascinating responses you get from these kids,
Let them study that Constitution, George, and I will take a bet with you. At the end of that exercise, they will say, well, hold on now. This guy have all this power?
No, I agree, but you see, I'm opting for a more structured education and for the time to be used more constructively in analyzing and going through.
Yes, I also agree with that.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. On the left, Mr. Brian Pitt. On the right, Cajecton Hood. Mr. Cajecton Hood. That's a
total Mr. in front of his name?
No, I'm a...
So why you putting a handle in front of mine and not his? He doesn't need a van. He doesn't need a van.
Okay, he's right honorable.
That's discriminatory.
He's right honorable. You're honorable.
I'm left honorable.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. This was stimulating and thought-provoking, like I thought it would be. I do appreciate your time here, and we'll take a little break and come back and wrap it up.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Quad Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
You don't know how many hurricanes will be coming this season, so you need to be prepared. At Hubbard's Hardware and Building Supply Departments and Food Fair Supermarkets, everything from canned foods, flashlights and batteries, to plywood, tarpaulin, lanterns, roof repair kits, water tanks, etc. are available. For over 90 years, we've helped you prepare for and recover from storms. Hubbard's Hardware, Food Fair Supermarkets, and the Grenadian General Insurance, an integral part of your hurricane preparedness plan.
All right, you folks, curtain time now. Time to pull the curtain down. But tell you what, quick comments that came in here. Regarding the suggestion made by Margaret a little while ago, Ryan agrees. John agrees. Looks like you guys are going to be back here a little bit more frequently. Renewed Purpose says, amen, Margaret. And Anthony DeRiggs says, true, we studied civics at Fletcher's School years ago. Renewed Purpose says, George, we need these guys more on your program. They are very resourceful. Tessa Barry, I don't know where she is this morning, but I think she might be in Trinidad. Tessa says, excellent discussions. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I do appreciate it. And on that note, we're going to say thank you, folks, for joining us for this week's edition of Sundays with George Grant. Going to leave you with a parting word. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding, but in everything that you do, acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. Okay, folks? Tomorrow morning, we'll be back, yes, sirree, at 9 o'clock to start a brand new week. Good day, Grenada. Look forward to seeing you then. God bless you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.